You ever get the feeling that what we fight about in politics has just completely changed? I mean, it feels less like we're arguing over tax rates and more like we're in a battle over values, over identity, over what it even means to be a good person. Well, you're not imagining it. There's this huge shift happening, a kind of great realignment from class to culture. And today, we're going to dive into the powerful forces behind it, from our deepest psychological needs to the brand new ideologies that are really reshaping our world. So this is the big question we're tackling, right? Why has the whole political battlefield moved from economic turf over to cultural ground? What's actually driving this change, and what does it mean for how we see the world and, each other? Just think about it like this. For most of the 20th century, the main fight in politics was economic. It was labor versus capital, arguing over how to slice up the economic pie. But today, the conflict is becoming more and more cultural. The big divisions aren't really about class anymore. They're about identity groups. And the central question has shifted from how do we divide the money to something way more personal. Whose values get to be in charge? That, right there, is the great realignment in a nutshell. Okay, so to really get into this, we have to figure out if this shift is just a feeling we all have or if it's something you can actually, measure. Well, it turns out the data is pretty shocking. Research from a team of Oxford academics uncovered this really striking trend. They looked at survey data and found that right around 2008, political fights over cultural stuff, things like immigration and national identity, just skyrocketed. And at the exact same time, disagreements over economic issues like taxes and government spending actually went down. So this isn't just some story the media is telling, it's a real measurable thing. So if it's not just about the money anymore, what is it about? Well, political scientist Francis Fukuyama makes a powerful case that a deeply human, non-economic motive is at the very heart of this shift, a universal demand for dignity. To really get this, we need a concept from way back in political philosophy, Thymos. The easiest way to think about it is that it's the part of your soul that isn't about what you want or what you think. It's the part that craves recognition. It's that little voice inside that says, hey, I matter and I demand to be respected. And Fukuyama argues this craving for dignity is one of the main engines driving identity politics today. And wow, this quote just nails it, doesn't it? It perfectly captures what Thymos is all about. It suggests that a lot of the political anger we see today isn't just about people not having enough stuff. It's about this deep, profound sense of lost dignity, of feeling that your status, your whole way of life is being disrespected or just plain erased. And that feeling of being looked down on, that is an incredibly powerful political force. So, as this demand for dignity got more and more intense, new ideologies started popping up to help people make sense of the world. One of the most prominent and, let's be honest, controversial of these, as argued by linguist John McWhorter, acts less like a political platform and a lot more like a new religion. McWhorter sets up his argument by talking about 3 waves of anti-racism. Okay, so wave 1, that was the fight against actual slavery and legal segregation. Wave 2 was the struggle against prejudiced attitudes. But this third wave, he says, is a whole different animal. It's focused on these really abstract ideas like dismantling structures. And it's super concerned with policing language and behavior in a way he calls performative, meaning it's more about showing you're virtuous than getting concrete results. And McWhorter really builds his case here by drawing these direct lines to how religions are structured. He argues that the concept of white privilege works like a kind of original sin. If you question the core ideas, it's treated like blasphemy. Publicly shaming anyone who disagrees, that's the new evangelism. And he even points to thinkers like Robin DiAngelo and Ibram X. Kendi as a new kind of clergy, guiding the faithful. And this is where it gets really tricky, according to McWhorter. He says this new faith comes with its own catechism of contradictions, these paradoxical rules that create logical traps where you just can't win. For instance, you're told your personal intent is irrelevant, only the impact matters. And then there's the classic catch-22. Denying that you're racist is held up as the ultimate proof that you are one. It creates this kind of house of mirrors with no logical way out. Okay, so where in the world did these ideas even come from? To get at their intellectual roots, we can turn to the political scientist Yascha Mounk. He traces the whole thing back to what he calls the identity synthesis, a framework he warns is a dangerous trap, even for people who have the best intentions. So what is the identity synthesis? Mounk defines it as this new worldview that's created by mashing together a few different academic theories. Postmodernism, which is really skeptical of truth, postcolonialism, which focuses on oppression, and critical race theory. The end result, he argues, is an ideology that puts group identity above all else, even above universal liberal values like free speech and the idea of equal treatment for everyone. Mounk actually breaks this worldview down into 7 core pillars, like a playbook. It all starts with being super skeptical of objective truth. Then, you analyze language to find hidden power dynamics. And crucially, the goal isn't to get past identity categories, but to embrace them and double down. This leads to what he calls a proud pessimism about social progress and a demand for laws that are sensitive to identity instead of just treating everyone the same. And it all gets tied together with ideas like intersectionality and standpoint theory, the belief that only certain marginalized groups have a special kind of access to the truth. So what does this look like in the real world? Well, the consequences can be pretty jarring. Mounk tells the story of a Black mother in Atlanta who was absolutely horrified when she found out her son was being put into an all-Black classroom, supposedly for his own good. Mounk sees this as a direct result of the identity synthesis in action, a rejection of universalism that he calls progressive separatism. Okay, so we've looked at the big philosophical drivers and the ideological frameworks, but how does this stuff actually work inside our own heads? How does an identity literally change what we believe? That Oxford paper we mentioned earlier has a really powerful psychological model for this. The key concept here is a word called salience. Basically, something is salient when it's top of mind, when it feels really important right now. So in politics, when a particular fight, let's say over immigration or race, gets super intense, that cultural divide becomes highly salient. It becomes the main filter people use to see everything in the political world. And this kicks off a powerful 4-step process in our brains. First, some conflict makes a social divide, like culture, highly salient. Second, we naturally start to identify with our side of that divide. Third, and this is the really wild part, our brains subconsciously start to slant our other beliefs to better fit the stereotype of our new group. We often don't even realize we're doing it. And the final result? Massive group polarization, where the gap between us and them feels way, way bigger than it actually is. And here's just how powerful this effect can be. Let's take one person, a lower-class voter. Now, if class is the most salient identity in politics, that voter is way more likely to demand more economic help. But if culture becomes the most salient thing, that very same voter, now identifying as a conservative, might become more culturally conservative and, get this, demand less economic help, even if it goes against their own financial interest. The identity that gets switched on can literally change their mind. So, where does all this leave us? Well, this great realignment has pretty much rewritten the rules of politics, creating a new landscape that's just defined by division and resentment, and the consequences are all around us now. What we get is hyperpolarization, where we don't just disagree with the other side. We actively distrust them, we think the worst of them. We get belief slanting, where our group stereotype becomes more important than reality. This leads to this totally bizarre political paradox. At a time when economic inequality is rising, we're actually fighting less about it. And finally, all this fuels a populist backlash, because dominant groups start to feel that their own identity and dignity are under attack, creating this vicious cycle of resentment. But is all this division just inevitable? Is this our future? Francis Fukuyama, the one who helped us understand that demand for dignity, also offers a little bit of hope. He reminds us that while identity is a really powerful tool for dividing people, it has also been a powerful tool for bringing them together. Think about broad, inclusive national identities that have united all kinds of different people. The tool itself isn't the problem, it's all about how we decide to use it. And that leaves us with the final and most critical question. Is this new era of culture wars and identity-based division just a permanent feature of our politics now? Or is it possible to build a new, broader, more inclusive identity that can actually bring us together, one that focuses not on what divides us, but on a shared sense of dignity and a common purpose? This, right here, is the core challenge of the Great Realignment.